synopsis on each one of them. I'll just go through some of these strong points, and that'll lead us to where our recommendation comes from. Area Towing really excelled in their technology section. The way they track vehicles for us is unmatched. They do a great job with that stuff. We're really happy with what they do. Martin's Towing had glowing reviews for their customer service. They've done a tremendous job for numerous agencies, including many of the federal side. They do a great job with their auctions. They were really, really strong in that area. Third vendor, J&M Towing, excels with their heavy machinery. Actually, they have more towing equipment than any of the other vendors combined, actually. They operate for many of the local jurisdictions, including Dearborn Heights, Huron Township, and Romulus. So again, their area they excelled in would be in the heavy towing for us. Based upon that information, we sat down and we made a recommendation that going through both those phases, the scoring out of the original RFP and then our background investigation, that all three of those vendors have passed. They all, if you combine them together, would actually create, in our opinion, almost the perfect towing firm. So therefore, we brought forth that recommendation for you. So, any questions on that?
Are you logistically?
Councilman Crown.
Logistically, so how do you see that working for you? So if there's a chain of command issue, you're going to use one out of the three.
Okay.
If there's a large vehicle issue, you're going to use another one out of the three, or how's that going to work?
Well, operationally, we've had a lot of latitude. Obviously, I've worked with the mayor and the chief of staff, and we've gone through some of these issues. The police department still have control over how the tow companies are used.
Right.
And again, looking at their strengths is how we would use them. I think we have a number of heavy towing issues, and we want to be able to maintain control of all vendors. We don't want people subcontracted out. We kind of lose control over them. So therefore, we'd have a heavy tow in place. We do many, many auctions. We've had some issues with some of the auctions being done in a timely manner, and we know that Martin's Towing excels at that. We also know that Area Towing has done a good job of tracking vehicles on a day-to-day basis with us. So we would use them in that manner. So
I guess I'm not clear on this. Are you guys requesting that we approve all three of these companies as vendors for the city?
our recommendation is that all three pass the first two phases. Again, the original evaluation of meeting the requirements of the RFP, which was established by that towing committee, the evaluation committee.
Which committee?
Which one? There
was two.
Let me provide some light on that. Chief Slovassi started an RFP review committee that consisted of Councilman Garza, Councilwoman Croft, and Councilman Becerra. And then I think Mike Lividini and the police chief.
Yourself?
No, I was not on that. Not on that.
You never attended any of the meetings?
No, not with those meetings. And then the recommendations were made. From that point on, the administration worked with the purchasing department and the police chief to finalize the RFP. When the bids came back, or the proposals came back from the RFP, we felt that it was important not to have anybody that was engaged in the drafting of the RFP on the review committee. So that's why people that were selected had no input on the actual RFP itself. So Deputy Chief Hopper, Keith Bach, Councilman Johnson, who was the fourth?
Richard Miller.
Well, Richard is purchasing director,
Richard was on
but and then Chief Portis, yeah. So yeah, Richard was the only one engaged in both sides of that process. So there was a group making recommendations to the RFP, and then there was a review committee that were separate.
Maybe that would be the evaluation committee.
Yeah.
Okay, it's evaluation. And you have to excuse me because I was not involved in this part of the process. Correct. It was not the chief. Right. So again, our recommendation is that these two companies, these three vendors have passed both phases. They've passed the original RFP. They have the equipment. They have all the requirements that were met in that RFP, and then they passed that background phase, which included a criminal background, as well as us checking on the facility and making sure that they can fulfill our needs, being able to work with within the guidelines that the police department needs. So that's why we made that recommendation that we did.
So we're not, so what you're saying is that at a later date you would bring forth contract language with each of these individual towing companies?
Well, I don't think the police department's going to bring back
Or
contract
administration?
language.
I think it's already there.
I think the approval's within the framework of the RFP.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at.
And then supposedly you guys are gonna dictate who gets, I mean, I guess, well, I got a couple questions. First one is, it says, in your recommendation, some examples of those issues would be providing dedicated space to the city of Taylor for 300 vehicles inside storage, or 10 vehicles in proper, you know, if it's saying that some of these companies don't have this. If they don't have that, how would they qualify
Yeah,
for the bid?
I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Chief Hopper. He did
Okay.
a site visit. He could probably explain a little bit more
Okay.
clearly about the
Real
lack
quick,
of
how many
space.
site visits were done? Just two?
We did one because there had been a gap of time since we had been there last. We wanted to see if anything had changed, if they still had the facilities that they said that they had, and were they still engaged with the same contracts that they had during that time. So when we went to the site visits, we spoke with J&M and Martin's Towing, and they had lots that were capable of the space, although the space wasn't dedicated for us at this current time. So my recommendation would be that before they actually get the contract, we go over there and make sure that they had dedicated space and maybe equipment changes or whatever they needed to meet our
But that
contract.
didn't eliminate them from the bid process.
No, because they had the space there.
Okay.
Like J&M, for example, has a 5-acre lot that is right at Wick Road and Inkster Road.
Yeah.
And then they have a secondary lot that's right on the Dearborn Heights side of Van Born Road. And they have 10 acres for Martin's Towing. And they have the space available,
Where
but
is
you'd have,
Martin's located? Because I didn't know they were within 1 mile.
they're right at the corner of Allen Road and Pennsylvania. They're directly across the street. They actually have a Dix Road entrance and a Pennsylvania Road entrance. So they're right there. And you kind of lose it because there's landscaping place right there. They're kind of hard to see.
Yeah.
But they're right there in the corner. They're really close. But they have space available. And they said as soon as we find out that we have the contract, then we're more than willing to make the accommodations for whatever it needs. The inside stores, you just have to clear out some boats or whatever may have been in there because they don't have the contract yet, and I think that that's reasonable.
One more question. Why, if we're, instead of going, you know, we're saying that some are special, why wouldn't we go with 2, 1 light, 1 heavy?
Well, again, the auction process is a huge thing for us. And again, it's hard to exclude another vendor when they've met all of our requirements. You know, interestingly enough, I'm sure you guys watch TV and see the fiasco we're seeing around the towing business. Casper Fiore's run into some problems, some have been indicted, and that is an area of concern of ours. You know, if we just had one vendor in place and someone got indicted, boy, we'd be between a rock and a hard place. So, and again, this is something we've tried to historically, we've had problems with historically, and we're trying to remedy through them. And we're looking at bringing in, you know, a second vendor or even a third vendor to provide quality services. There's a lot of things in RFP that have been addressed that have kind of helped some of the areas we've been suffering in. For example, I'll give you a good one. I always get this complaint. Why couldn't you tow my car from the crash scene to the Ford dealership right over here? Well, it's addressed in RFP. Those are things that have been really big to us, that have been a thorn in our side over the years, and we've tried to remedy with them. So,
Have you reached out to the actual vendors and asked them why they don't do that? Because, you know, I'm familiar with this business. I never worked for a private, but I worked for a private, so I'm familiar with the flatbed. And I think one of the issues that I seen from this, it doesn't seem like there's a lot, because sometimes, you know, a truck driver, a guy that's got a car on his flatbed, comes, picks my vehicle up, and I say, you know what, take it to Ford's. And then I get on the phone and we're going to Ford, you know, Taylor Ford. And then I can find somebody, oh, well, you know what, take it, you know, and what happens is that truck gets stuck with a car on its bed for a length of time,
Right.
and it's hurting the driver and the business. So, you know, I understand what you're saying, but there's always, you know, usually, you know, some things that I read in here, you know, there's some holes, and it's just, you
well,
know.
the reason we originally had them bring back to their lot was the reasons, you state 2 reasons actually. One, it was a time constraint, and
Right.
2, it was a tracking purpose.
Mhm.
And that's why we originally had them set up to do that. Now, if you throw in additional vendors, and we have a day, like we had about 2 weeks ago when I had a complaint come in, that we weren't able to tow someone's car about a half-mile away to their house. We couldn't do that because we had 2 or 3 other calls that were still waiting, you know, and they get tied up. So yeah, originally we have had them take that car directly back.
Right.
It really makes tracking that much easier, and then the time thing. So those are big to us.
What is, Chief, if, you know, the need for 3 towers, and I know that we're trying to, you know, come up with these reasons on why we need 3 towers, But exactly how often do they really get tied up where we would need to incorporate a different tower? I mean, how often does that occur where we would need to call on a different company to come up? Because, my understanding is, ever since I've been here, the need for the one tower has been sufficient for the police department, and it's been, for the most part, been sufficient. So I guess just speak to that issue.
Sure.
And, because I know that we're coming up with a lot of different reasons, but just how does that work? I know it's ever since, we've always had one tower, so.